May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. This weekend marked the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And last evening, as is our tradition in our neighborhood, our neighbors gathered, still in the street, even though it's open, but the traffic was careful. And we gathered out there to watch fireworks and just join with one another. I wore a t-shirt that said, America 250, Rachel Donaldson Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution. I paid $50 for that t-shirt because I had to outbid a friend at a chapter auction to raise money for a bench out at the Nathaniel Green Park, because when I walk by that bench, I want to know that I helped to pay for it. I prepared last evening by remembering my 5th and 6th grade grandfathers who fought in the American Revolution. I celebrated in honor of them, but also in honor of all who stand up for freedom, equality, and justice throughout all the generations. It seems like a short while ago that some of us, and I'm not going to name names or look at you, but it seems like a short while ago that some of us were celebrating the bicentennial. I can still picture myself as a teenager wearing a red, white, and blue halter top, standing on the curb next to my best friend Donna. We watched the 4th of July parade go down our main street, all 6 blocks of it, past the Masonic Temple, the American Legion, the dime store, and a half dozen bars, literally. I grew up on the Iron Range in northern Minnesota, where people work hard and play even harder. For 2 teenage girls in a small town, life seemed pretty carefree. It wasn't until many years later that I came to realize that it was not carefree for all of us. Already in our teens, some were carrying pretty heavy burdens, many of which were invisible to others. It was no different in Jesus' day. People were weighed down by heavy burdens, visible and invisible. They gathered as a community to grieve and also to celebrate. There were different cultural norms, of course, including specific gender roles, which I do not particularly like, but in that day, children would practice preparing for adulthood, and in that practice, the boys would play the flute because they were the ones who would grow up to play the flute at wedding celebrations, and the girls would practice wailing because they would grow up to be the women who would lead the mourning at funerals with their wailing. Children role-played just as children do today. And once in a while, disagreements broke out over which games should be played when. But even their conflicts were a preparation for adulthood, because children who don't learn the art of compromise can grow into childish adults who try to dictate how others behave, what they ought to say and do, how they ought to live their lives. The Gospel of Matthew is calling out just that kind of behavior. He's comparing Jesus' generation to disgruntled children. People are taking offense at both John the Baptist and Jesus. John, because he's too full of doom and gloom, living a life of asceticism and speaking out against the abuses of power and injustice, making trouble for himself and probably his followers as well. Jesus is offensive for different reasons. He's embracing life too joyfully. He's hanging out with the wrong people, embracing those who are considered outcasts and sinners. So people are offended because neither of these 2 men is the kind of person that they expected to have been sent to them by God. John is labeled demon-possessed, which today would probably translate to he's crazy, whereas Jesus is labeled a drunkard and a glutton. With such labels, both of them can be disregarded. Life was not easy then. It is not easy now. It continues to be a mix of joy and sorrow, and we never seem to find a balance between the two. Hardships come, and they can overwhelm us, throwing us so off balance. So when joy comes, it is a welcome reprieve. Our current state of mind might inform who we need Jesus to be for us when we're broken to pieces, as we sometimes are. We want Jesus to be that gentle shepherd we see in pictures, carrying that lamb so close to his breast. And when we feel lighthearted, we might be drawn to that print some of you may have seen of Jesus laughing. I love that one. We want Jesus to conform to what we need him to be in the moment, to soothe our sorrows, to rejoice in our triumphs, sometimes to take our side. We want Jesus to walk with us, to go our way. We also want Jesus to take our burdens away from us and carry them for us, because we carry such heavy burdens. The juggling of too much in our lives, work, family obligations, volunteer commitments, health struggles, and so many other things that go unseen. All of that and more, and something deeper as well. We carry the invisible weight of regrets, resentment, remorse, and shame. And we carry the weight of sin, not those easily defined don'ts that have come to be thought of as sins, but sin with a capital S, which is our separation from God and from the people of God, the people that we were called to love just as we love ourselves. But first of all, we also have to love ourselves, which can be especially difficult. Also, sometimes in that sense of separation, we start to buy into that illusion that we are some kind of island that is supposed to be self-sufficient, which is not what we were created to be. You know that phrase. I heard it just the other day from a friend of mine who is struggling in ways that are just impossible to imagine what that would be like to go through as much as he's going through. And he said to me, God never gives us more than we can handle. Well, I wanted to say, but I didn't say it as loudly as I'm going to say it right now. That is a load of crap. Because first of all, God is not the one that places burdens upon us or causes our suffering. And also, we were never designed to handle all that comes our way, not alone. So, are we to just hand off our burdens to Jesus? Because that would be nice. Hand them off and go on our way, lighter and freer. Is that what Jesus means by saying, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest"? We are so weary. I know I have felt so weary so many times this last year, and I know some of you have as well. So rest, that sounds like just the ticket. But Jesus is not offering to remove our burdens so we can just take a holiday from all our trouble. Jesus is saying, let's carry it together. Come to me, walk with me, learn from me. Jesus is inviting us to journey with him, to become his apprentices, so that we might come to know God as only Jesus knows God. Not God with a small g, the one who fits our expectations and supports our agenda, but the true God, the God of love who calls each and every one of us beloved. You are my beloved. The one who calls us to love others as ourselves. Jesus, in fact, invites us to be yoked to him. You know, out at the national park, Wilson's Creek National Park, we have a yoke that we show to the students who come out and visit. But that yoke is for carrying water, like they would have had to do during the battle, up from the creek. But it's only got one place to put a neck. I mean, it's hard to imagine carrying all that water, just one person. But that's not the kind of yoke that Jesus is inviting us to step into. Maybe you've seen a yoke with 2 spots, 2 places for necks. That's the kind of yoke Jesus is talking about. It's that kind of yoke Jesus is inviting us to step into with him, to carry our load, our burden together. But here we might take a pause for a moment and ask ourselves, is that really what we want? To be yoked to Jesus? Do we want to be yoked to the only one who truly knows God, the one who God truly knows? Do we want to be yoked to the one who will show us who he is in the same way that he showed John the Baptist? Because even John the Baptist struggled to recognize Jesus. In the text that precedes this gospel, John sends his disciples from prison, where he's being held for speaking out against King Herod and his wife. He sends his disciples to confirm Jesus' identity. He wants to know, are you the one who is to come, or should we wait for another? In Matthew 11:4-5, we read Jesus' response. Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. Is that who we want to be yoked to? Do we want to go the way of Jesus? Because Jesus is not offering to go our way. Jesus is inviting us to go his way. And that is radical. Because new patterns are not going to fit like that well-worn solo yoke we've been wearing. The new one, the easy one, may take a little adjusting, but the promise is there. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now that yoke is going to take some getting used to. And I sort of compare that to a brand new pair of Birkenstocks. See, if you know, you know. If you don't know, look at my feet on the way out, because I love wearing Birkenstocks. They're my most favorite shoe. They're the only thing I think truly fits. However, the first time you put them on, someone said this to me last night, who remembered the first time she put them on, she said, I felt like I was standing on a rock. And that is true. They are not immediately comfortable. You have to break them in properly, and it takes time. And I imagine that that is how it is for us as we learn new patterns, as we apprentice ourselves to Jesus, as we learn to walk in the way that Jesus leads us. It will not feel immediately comfortable. It takes time, and it takes continuing in that journey with Jesus. Going forward, yoked to Jesus is certainly going to stretch us and shape us in unimaginable ways. It may very well be that we will be among those whose sight becomes clearer, the ones whose ears will be opened, and the ones who will finally know they are cleansed and raised to new life. So may we have the courage to journey with Jesus, to go wherever Jesus leads us, and to finally know that peace of mind and that rest for our souls. Amen.